Ladies and gentlemen, this is your Captain Speak, and I hope you have your orders ready because this week I'm looking at Valhalla, Cyberpunk Bartender Action, or Va-11 Hall A, or Va-11 Hall A if the dash don't be silent. Developed by Venezuelan studio Sukeban Games and released on different platforms from 2017 to 2019. The game was developed upon the concept of making side characters, the ones in the background that never get any development, the main focus. So in Valhalla, you don't play as a hero, you play as a bartender. The world doesn't revolve around her or hang on her reactions, she just lives and reacts to it. Set in a futuristic world where Japan's technological prowess allowed them to conquer the world, in the metropolitan wasteland known as Glitch City, the game focuses on the protagonist's interactions with these other side characters and making those relationships most prevalent. And it works well, most of which can probably be attributed to the very real experiences these characters were built on. Each character has their own issues and problems in this dystopian city, but they mostly aren't sour about it. They try to persevere through it and look for the bright spots in every day, which the Venezuelan developers said reflected their lives in Venezuela, because, you know, socialism sucks. One thing I'd like to mention is that this review is going to be structured a lot differently than a lot of my recent ones. I'm not going to be starting at the beginning of the game and combing through the story to the end, or else we'd be here until Christmas. This story, world, and characters are a lot better experienced than told, as this game is all about immersing you and taking you on a fun ride. So instead, I'll be breaking down each character, telling you what kind of person they are, what to expect from them, and how they contribute to the story. If at any point the game sounds interesting to you, then go and play it, as this video could never do it justice. Change is inevitable, and even if this one is temporary, it shouldn't stop us from giving it everything we've got! The game is almost exclusively told from the perspective of the 27-year-old bartender at the Valhalla bar, GILLIAN Natalie Stingray, though if you call her anything but Jill, she'll turn you into Steve Irwin. Jill is, with no exaggeration, one of my favorite protagonists ever. Not because of some unique personality or dynamic that sets her apart, but because she doesn't have any of that. She's such a perfectly fleshed out character that every single player will be able to relate to her in some way. It could be the simple stuff like being in your late 20s, or being bisexual, or dealing with debt and rent payments, or being a bartender. Or it could be the more, and forgive me for using this word, quirky stuff, like her irrational fear of aliens, laughing at the drink called a bad touch, thinking all penises are hilarious, hating her own name for a reason she admits is dumb, not being over an ex, pretending her cat talks to her, collecting vintage drinks, being by far the most serious out of all of her friends, among other things. She has so many realistic complexities to her personality that you often forget that someone had to write all of this and it didn't just exist. However, much like World's End Club, the quality of one thing actively works against another, and in this case, it's the endings. This game has 6 endings, and they are all underwhelming. They're called endings, yet none of them have any sense of conclusion or satisfying finality. All of the endings are tied into specific characters, so I'll kill 2 livers with 1 drink when I get to them. As for all the non-Jill characters, I'm going to treat this like YouTube's favorite pastime, a top 10 list. I'll start with my least favorite and work my way up. Number 23. Alright, starting the list with someone who is dead. Awesome.
Hey there, demons. It's me, your boy.
Despite her placement at the bottom of this list, it's really nothing she did specifically that gets her here. Yeah, she can be very annoying, and her fourth wall breaking doesn't serve the story at all and actively works against the immersion that every single other thing in this game does a great job doing, but that's not her biggest problem. She is the first character you see in the game, and then you rarely see her after that, aside from briefly glitching into the TV. Usually, when a character says cryptic shit at the beginning of something, you'll be able to crack those cryptic messages later. But there's no cryptic cracking here. All you learn is that she's the dead adoptive sister of someone we'll see much later in this list, and the bare minimum of a possible explanation for why Jill can see her. You could cut her from this game entirely and nothing would be lost. In fact, stuff would be gained.
Get out of my sight. Get out of my sight.
Number 22. The best way I can explain streaming Chan is in a way that only some people will understand, but those who understand it will really understand it. Real name Nicole Chen, streaming Chan is like Madcap Moss. She succeeds at doing exactly what she's supposed to, but what she's doing is annoying as f*** and actively makes you want to stop engaging with whatever you're doing. Streaming Chan is every negative e-girl, Twitch streamer, and internet personality stereotype bundled into one steaming sack of steampunk shit and set ablaze on Jill's front porch.
For a guy that is in a relationship to be interested in other girls, that's just cheating. But if a girl who's in a relationship becomes interested in another guy, it often means that she's not getting what she needs to get from that relationship.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard.
She live streams her life 24/7, and she's loud, annoying, invasive, perverse, and greedy, charging $100 for premium viewership, which are things like baths, showers, and the Little Fingers Cave Adventure special time.
I can't get a job because of it. Any boss can easily Google me. My nickname did not help.
Luckily, she only shows up twice, which saves her from being the lowest on this list, as you don't have to deal with her often, unlike Madcap Moss and his terrible jokes!
Be gone, fuck! I turned myself
number 21! Boom. Donovan is the CEO of the Augmented Eye newspaper, and looked like Steve Harvey and Dr. Phil had a baby, and that baby grew up to be J. Jonah Jameson's less successful cousin.
Out of pocket for that shit. Way out of pocket. What do you gain from that?
I don't know who made the baffling decision to make a character with so few redeemable qualities the first patron you serve in the game. He's not even an important character. He shows up the first 3 nights and then not at all for 2 weeks, and the game only goes 19 nights. Maybe if he was around longer, he could have been fleshed out more and we could have seen more of his good side, but all we see is that he's a douchebag who prioritizes the sexual elements of every woman he sees to their face and doesn't care how they respond. I'm not here to give the whole respect women speech.
Miss, will you please let me private message you, please, ma'am?
But when it's one of the main defining traits of your character, and I know very little other than that aside from the fact that you hate your wife and your job, it doesn't do you any favors. Number 20. It's just a brain in a jar. That's it, really. It only shows up once, and it's more about being the punchline to a joke made by another character than actually being its own character. There's not much else to say here.
For the first time in my life, I'm fucking speechless. I got nothing.
Number 19! The second patron you serve in the game, and they really went 0-2. Ingram, and the weird angle with which he looks at you is just a dick. He shows up an infrequent 4 times throughout the game, and he does get a bit of dimension to his character, which is why he's higher than DAWSON, but it was never enough to make me enjoy seeing him show up at the bar.
Could you not be yourself? For 5 minutes!
Number 18. He's an obvious and shameless reference to a show I know nothing about. Aside from that, he's a private investigator looking into the serial killer Crimson Rose, which could have been interesting if he showed up more than 4 fucking times and if the investigation actually went anywhere. This game doesn't really have a story, it just has the evolution of Jill's relationships with the patrons, her friends, and her co-workers, so a fun mystery side plot could have helped make things more interesting for those struggling to get invested. Sadly, it was not meant to be.
It's
Number 17. Woohoo!
That
He's gay. That's it. That's his entire character. It's the classic guy puts on a manly facade to hide his feminine tastes thing, and he isn't around nearly long enough to allow it to grow beyond that. And before anyone tries to cancel me for implying all gay men are girly or whatever, no. He asks for manly drinks, and you have to give him the girly drinks he really asks for, so he quite literally has feminine tastes, and I quite literally don't care. Number 16. Man, Deal just gets a raw, well, deal. He only shows up twice, and both times he's being overshadowed by his much cooler, funnier, and memorable best friend. Deal is the first Lilim on this list as well, a race of humanoid artificial intelligences living amongst people, and really that's the only notable thing about him. He is constantly busy playing the quite literal straight man, and he never gets a chance to grow beyond that, like if David Spade was only ever someone for Chris Farley to bounce off of.
Number 15.
Your enjoyment of this character will depend heavily on your enjoyment of fucking dog jokes, and I'm a cat person. The best part about Rad Shiba is the fact that his name isn't Rad Shiba, but everyone insists on calling him that because he's a Shiba in a Hawaiian shirt and sunglasses, which is fair. He appears a bit before the halfway point in the game and doesn't get any character progression or growth, though he does pop up in short bursts throughout the rest of the game. He has his moments, but overall he's majorly forgettable.
Stupid dog! You made me look bad!
Number 14. Number 14. And the patron saint of majorly forgettable has arrived. Seriously, Brian comes and goes so fast you think he is a ninja or something. He only shows up once and he doesn't stick around long, but I had no reason to dislike him in the time he was around. He was a nice dude.
That must have been one swood guy.
And speaking of characters who aren't around very long but give me no reason to dislike them in that time, that's going to be a common theme for a bit. Kim shows up on day 1 and then only has 2 more appearances throughout the whole game. She has one of the more unique introductions, and they managed to squeeze a full arc into those 3 appearances, so she finds herself in a fine spot on the list. She's far from the best character this game has to offer, but she's a solid inclusion that I enjoyed. Number 12. By all accounts, Norma really shouldn't be on this list. She only shows up once, and you don't even serve her a drink. She's a 17-year-old who only shows up to Valhalla despite her controlling mother.
God, Mom, give me my fucking space! Shit! Dad!
I won't give away too much of her interactions with Jill, but they provide a great insight into a side of Jill's character that you wouldn't have seen without her. Plus, I like the mini arc her character gets. Number 11. On the cusp of the top 10, we're getting into pretty good territory now. Jamie is a professional bounty hunter and a pretty down-to-earth guy. He's not one of my favorites, but he's definitely not a bad character either. He just doesn't show up frequently enough to break into that top tier. The reason he's higher than everyone so far is because I enjoyed what they did with his time more, and he managed to still be one of the most memorable characters for me, despite his last appearance being on day 8 of 19. And 19 minus 8 is 11, which is his spot on this list. Subtract 1 for that, and that's where we find ourselves next.
Quick maths.
He is the perfect 10!
Hello, Kira Miki. Why aren't you in this game more?
I like this. This is cute.
Seriously, you can read her blog every day and buy like 5 different pieces of her merch at the store, but she only appears physically twice! Kira Miki is a Chia King model Lilim, and I am reliably informed that this is a reference to the Idol Master series because a character named Azusa Miura is voiced by a woman named Chia King, and both Azusa and Kira Miki have the same bust size of 91, which, I mean, there's certainly one way to reference something, I guess. She's an idol, which is basically the Japanese equivalent of pop stars, and her interactions provide a good look at the best and worst aspects of that life. Like how she's able to be happy for others when they need happiness, while also having to deal with stalkers, including one that breaks into her house once a week to cook her breakfast. Which is weird. Of all the characters in this game, she is by far the one I wished showed up more, but I really enjoyed the short time I spent with her. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a breakfast to make before entry number 9. Number 9! Remember the unresolved mystery surrounding Anna I mentioned all that time ago? Well, this is how you do unsolved mysteries right. The running joke with Gil is that no one knows his backstory and he's always disappearing under shady circumstances to do God knows what. Unlike Anna, it's not set up as a mystery you're supposed to solve. It's set up as the definition of his character that would severely diminish his stock if it was solved. Gil isn't a patron though, he's Jill's co-worker and they bounce off each other well. There's a slow progression as they go from regular co-workers to actual friends, and it's done extremely well. It builds in the background and doesn't take away from any other aspect of the story. However, due to it mostly being in the background, he doesn't get the spotlight as much, hence him just making it inside the top 10. Number 8! Deal was number 16, and his far superior best friend makes it to half that. Betty is one of the funniest characters in the game, and, as is very common here, would have been higher if she showed up more. The Chris Farley to Deal's David Spade, a lot of her time is spent making jokes about her job and a specific coworker that she's attracted to, and the ensuing shenanigans as she tries to have some fun with her. Honestly, the peak of Betty and Deal's comedy is the random Mambo number 5 reference when Deal lists all of Betty's exes. The actual story between the two isn't the greatest since it's very easy to forget about and you don't see them enough for it to stand out, but I always liked when Betty rolled up for a drink, so that's how she gets to this spot on the list.
Oh my god, Emily is on her crackhead stuff. Emily, do it!
Dana is Jill's boss and will just do the most random shit at the most random times and you'll come to love it. Also, both ills refer to Dana almost exclusively as boss, so I will be too, because it's what I'm used to. Boss can occasionally get annoying, but she has many more good moments than bad, including a great moment where she hangs out with Jill after work one night at Jill's apartment. They don't at all attempt to hide Jill's crush on Boss, which is yet another story element that sees no growth whatsoever. The closest we get is that she's involved in the good ending, but there's a character we haven't met yet that's also involved in it, so I won't be going over it just yet. Dana is Sukeban Games' mascot, so her getting so many moments in this game isn't a surprise, but I feel a lot of them could have been given to the characters I've mentioned prior that needed more growth. However, a lot of them have contributed to her spot on this list. Number 6? Okay, now that we're on the cusp of S-tier quality, a lot of these entries will spoil the closest thing this game has to a main story and the endings. So if you are curious to play the game for yourself and want to do it blind, now is the best time to leave.
I don't know why you people are watching this shit anymore. The point has been made. You've seen all you need to see.
I don't get why people hate Gabrielle. She doesn't show up until late in the game, but she plays a pretty big role. She's the younger sister of Jill's ex and visits her to inform her that her sister is dead, and that she blames Jill for it. Jill obviously doesn't take this well, leading to a very depressing yet very well-written section going through Jill's mental state after hearing the news.
I live in Spain. Without the S.
I feel like people stopped paying attention to Gabby after hearing that she blames Jill for her sister's death.
Inhale my dong enragement child.
Completely missing the end of the game where they make amends and Gabby accepts Jill's offer to live with her. It's a story that isn't given much time to be told, but it's told very effectively. They move in together in every ending that isn't the bad ending, and the good ending sees Jill and Dana head off for a trip to Panama, which is the tease for the sequel Nirvana, or N1-RV on/A. The name of a bar down there run by Boss's old friend Iris, which is a reference to Sukeban Games' point-and-click game sales pitch, in which Dana and Iris have to verbal kint their way through a, you guessed it, sales pitch. However, the sequel is currently trapped in development in Niflheim, so we won't be getting there for a while. Back on track though, Gabby herself is a strong character as well. She's the classic young girl who is way too smart for her age, but they don't forget to allow her to be a kid, and she expresses her grief as you'd realistically expect a child would. Also, she's adorable, so that helps.
Mambo number 5.
She's a catgirl pirate. Do I even need to say anything else? Okay, so really Stella is neither catgirl nor pirate. In this world, there's a surgical procedure that fetuses go through if their body might be susceptible to nanomachine rejection, and a side effect of that surgery is growing appendages that resemble cat ears. And there were families who had their kids go through that procedure just because they liked the look, proving that Elon Musk exists in this world.
I will show you a teaser shot of the, It's live.
And her missing eye is tied into something that happened in her past, and she doesn't like talking about it. She is 1/3 of the best told story in this game, though she's the weakest part of the Triforce. It really comes down to personal preference with the top 5, but Stella felt the least developed to me. She has good moments, but they're almost all about her caring about other characters instead of being her own. Still, she's a Valhalla regular who I never got tired of seeing, and I enjoyed her character and story a lot. Number 4. Well, I definitely didn't expect this man to be as high as he is when he first walked through the door. He's incredibly annoying and eccentric, constantly showing up at the worst possible times, and you slowly begin to learn that there's a lot more to him than the facade he puts on. In fact, the story behind him is a part of the best story in the game, and I don't want to spoil it just yet. I can say with confidence, though, that if those extra wrinkles weren't added to his character later on, he'd be sat right below Streaming Chan, because at least Streaming Chan is kinda cute, thus proving the patriarchy's lie as we head into the top 3. Number 3. Say is a Valkyrie in the White Knights. The White Knights basically being a futuristic version of Hitler's Schutzstaffel, but, you know, not racist. Or just a 100% accurate futuristic version of Hitler's Schutzstaffel if you believe Whoopi Goldberg. What was I saying? Oh yeah, Say. Say is apparently heavily based on Rei Ayanami from Neon Genesis Evangelion, something I have never heard of nor seen, but I figured it was worth a mention.
True, dude. I'm literally not a weeb, man.
Now, I know it seems like I just called Say a Nazi and moved on, but she isn't. The Valkyrie unit only deals with rescuing people, healing injured, and protecting against all kinds of crimes. I actually really like Say's stance on the White Knights, and it ties into her backstory very well. When she was younger, she and Stella were attacked by a White Knight and would have died if not for another White Knight saving them and bringing them to the hospital. That attack is how Stella lost her eye, by the way, so she recognizes the evil that exists within the White Knight, though also sees that they can be used as a vehicle for good. And that White Knight who saved them? None other than Virgilio Armandio. His real name is Timothy Mercury, and his assault on another White Knight branded him a criminal despite the fact that he saved 2 children, so he had to change his identity and create an entirely new personality. But we're here to talk about Say, the purest nice girl full of pure niceness you ever will meet. She's the classic girl next door whose only fault is that she has no faults because she's just so nice! There are actually 2 endings involving the last 3 characters I talked about. In Virgilio's ending, he opens a curry stand, which was his dream, and Jill, Say, and Stella all visit, and yes, they really made a Tim's Curry joke. The other is the Kira Miki ending, in which Jill and the 2 bestest friends to ever best friend go to a Kira Miki concert and hear Kira Miki dedicate a song to Jill for talking to her twice. Makes sense to me. Moving on. Okay, what are we doing? Number 2. Oh, the thing, you know, number. And then there were two. Alma is one of Jill's closest friends who goes through relationships faster than it takes Barry Allen to fuck up the timeline. Alma is the gorgeous girl genius whose good looks and golden brain will go down in history, and an expert hacker who hacks into Jill's phone all the time for funsies. I love how Alma's personality bounces off Jill and how we don't see the formation of their friendship. We just see it as it already exists, which is exactly how both of them feel about it. From the second Alma first stepped into Valhalla, they just got each other, and we get to see that continue. I also like how they subvert the expectation of the beautiful woman being irresponsible because of how many guys she dates by having her struggles center around how irresponsible her sister is and what Alma is doing to try and stop it. The one thing I don't like about Alma's character, and this is going to sound weird at first but hear me out, is that they make her large such a recurring part of her character, yet have her wear something that makes it nearly impossible for the player to tell.
Holy fucking shit! Your fucking titties! Your titties! Your titties!
And while it sounds like me being upset that I don't get to stare at the pixelated
boobs, titties even, breasts, if you will, honkers, if you feel so inclined, but donkers, if I may incline,
of a two-dimensional character that isn't real, trust me when I say that that isn't the case. It just feels like a running joke that we don't get to be a part of. Like that Godzilla movie that came out where Godzilla just apparently forgot to be in the damn thing. Alma does have two endings to her name though. In the bad ending, Jill is evicted from her apartment and moves in with Alma, though I don't see any possible fucking angle you could look at that from where that's a bad thing. The Alma-specific ending sees Jill and Alma having a sleepover along with Gabrielle, and that's nice, but there's only one spot left, so let's waste no time and finish things strong.
FBI should be knocking on this door in a minute
Number 1. And the scholarly among you immediately begin looking for the biggest red flag you can possibly wave. This character's name comes from the 1955 novel Lolita, in which a middle-aged man enters a sexual relationship with his 12-year-old stepdaughter, and I hate every part of that description. And, well, Dorothy Haze isn't the name of the stepfather in that book. Also, this book is where the term Lolita and subsequent lolly and a lolicon come from, which just makes the whole thing worse. I want to make this less awkward, but it's not easy when Dorothy is an autonomous humanoid robot sex worker with the body of a 13-year-old.
Hey, quit fapping.
Dorothy's a DFC-72 model Lilim, which is two more references that make this worse. DFC is short for the 4chan term delicious flat chest, which is self-explanatory, I hope, and 72, combined with DFC, is another Idolmaster reference, this time to the character Chihaya Kisaragi. Also, she kinda looks like Aegis in a way. And that's fun. Despite everything Dorothy is being a one-way all-expenses paid trip to death in prison, I do like her character a lot. FBI, open up! She takes no shame in her profession or telling stories about it, which you have to respect on some level. Also, she's the funniest character in the game, so that helps. It should also be mentioned that she's not actually 13, she's in her mid to late 20s, she just has the body of a 13-year-old because fetishes. She constantly throws out random references to The Rock, Monty Python, and a bunch of other things I know, and I like how she genuinely grows to care about Jill and see her as a close friend. It's nice, and the sheer bluntness with which she expresses her career path makes it a bit easier to swallow.
Hey, phrasing!
And in case you were still wondering when I was going to mention this, yes, Dorothy is the adopted sister of Anna. Dorothy's real name is Rebecca Dorothy Willow Graham. She adopted the Dorothy Haze name for her career because, I don't know if you've noticed this, but subtlety isn't really her style. I will say though, her ending is a fat crock of shit. It's just a conversation about Anna that barely tells you anything. Not exactly the Dorothy ending. There are some one-off characters that I excluded because this is my list and I can do what I want, like the secret characters. In order to unlock these characters, you have to create a drink that isn't listed anywhere on the menu, though uses a very recognizable number pattern. 1, 1, 2, 3, 5. The Fibonacci sequence. The end result is a flaming moai, a reference to the flaming Moe from The Simpsons, though I don't know how they managed to make it without cough syrup. Also, all of the special characters are references to the game 2064 Read Only Memories, which features Xavier Woods. Bow down. There's also some characters from Y2K, which is apparently a toilet game, unlike this one, so let's bring it home, shall we? Okay, so this was less a regular review and more a ranking video, but there's really no better way to talk about this game without making it seem super boring. It doesn't tell a grand story or feature involved dating mechanics or any of that. It's just a bartender simulator where you get to know a wide variety of characters in this futuristic world. It's a heck of a lot of fun. Obviously, it's not for everybody, but if you love immersive storytelling with engaging worlds and fleshed out characters, you can't go wrong here. Not all of the characters are done well, but the ones that are done extremely well. I still stand by my statement of Jill being one of my favorite protagonists in fiction, and a lot of that comes from how she bounces off all of these characters. Even if I didn't like the characters themselves, I could enjoy what they revealed about Jill's personality. My biggest complaint with the game, as you may have been able to tell, is the endings. None of them feel like endings. There's no conclusivity to any of them. Now, I'm not saying this game had to be a dating simulator where you can get with any of the characters, but it couldn't have hurt these endings to at least give them something. With how well the characters are written and how they grow as people, it was just a shame that all of the endings fell flat. They deserved better. The final score for Valhalla Cyberpunk Bartender Action is a 6.5 out of 10. An immersive setting with a fun and easy gameplay cycle boosted with a handful of really strong characters and a lot more to pad the runtime that tells some great stories but fails to stick the landing in the end. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens with the sequel. I'm not a huge fan of the perspective switching to another character, as I really wanted Jill and Co to get the conclusions they were robbed of, but at least Jill and Boss will be in it in some way. Well, most likely anyway. Apparently the reasoning behind the game's indefinite delay is creative differences, so anything could happen to the story between now and the release. But you know what? I'm running out of patience here. We're halfway through February and I've yet to see any hot, steamy, loving action in these games. Where are the pretty ladies ready to pierce my heart? Or the foxy ladies ready to steal it? Oh, there they are. Am I going to regret this? Probably. Tune in next time to find out for sure though. I hope to see you there.
Continue.
She's got huge boobs. I mean some serious hunkers. A real setup of donkers. Packing some Doban hunkeros. Massive da hunka bankaloos. Big ol' tanhangera cougars. A bonk hanaga hoogs. Humongous hungalamga no no logangas.